Thank you for joining us as we review nationalism. Nationalism is commonly defined as a love for one's country. Nationalism was the largest and most successful political force of the 19th century. As we see in this political cartoon, that supranationalism often resulted in blindly following a charismatic leader, and that often ended in disaster. Nationalism comes from two main concepts. The first is the desire to feel as if you belonged or had an identity that you shared with your friends and neighbors. Secondly, was the belief that for a state to be legitimate, or for the power to be legitimate, that it needed to be based on the people rather than on a ruling family or religion. Throughout history, when groups of people have shared some cultural identity, be it language or customs, history or religion, they've often felt the power of nationalist feeling. And this has often resulted in the desire to control their own nation. This is known as an autonomous state, and autonomy is defined as a nation governing itself independently. Revolutions, war, and other conflicts have occurred throughout history because of nationalism and national identities. Nationalism can unite people into cohesive, stable nations, and it can also tear nations apart when there are conflicting nationalist groups. So let's take a look at the unification of Italy. Italy in the early 1800s was made up of a number of small independent states, and while they did work together briefly when they were under threat of Napoleon, they still remained independent. There are three people you need to be familiar with as we look at the unification of Italy. From Sardinia, which is an island off the west of Italy, which also included this land to the northeast of Italy, we have Count Cavour and King Victor Emmanuel II. From southern Italy, we have Giuseppe Garibaldi. This is Count Cavour. He's the leading minister for the Kingdom of Sardinia, and in reality, he runs the country for King Victor Emmanuel. It is Count Cavour's goal to unify Italy under King Victor Emmanuel. Count Cavour manages to unify northern Italy. Southern Italy is unified by Giuseppe Garibaldi. He had spent 12 years in South America learning guerrilla warfare in the various Latin American independence movements. In 1870, Count Cavour negotiates with Giuseppe Garibaldi, and they agree to unify southern and northern Italy under King Victor Emmanuel. Once this is accomplished, King Victor Emmanuel moves his capital from Sardinia to Rome. These maps show us the various small independent states that made up Italy in the early 1800s, and to the right, the provinces or states of the unified Italy in the late 1800s. Now let's take a look at the unification of Germany. Like Italy, Germany in the mid-1800s consists of a number of small independent states. After the fall of Napoleon, the Congress of Vienna restored the royal families to the various countries of Europe. They also created the German Federation. This was essentially lumping together in a single federation a group of German-speaking nations. This included Prussia as well as the Austrian Empire. In 1861, Wilhelm I becomes the King of Prussia. One of the first things he does is appoints Otto von Bismarck as the head of his cabinet. Von Bismarck essentially runs the country for Wilhelm I. Germany was rapidly industrializing and had become one of the strongest countries in Europe. Bismarck built the army into a modern war machine. But he did things his own way. He opposed democracy and ignored the Constitution whenever it was convenient. His desire was to expand both Prussian influence as well as its territory. Under Bismarck, Germany fights 3 wars of unification. With these wars, Bismarck was looking to overcome Southern German distrust and opposition, and to drive Austria out of a leadership position. These 3 wars of unification were fought over a period of 6 years, and the one we're going to focus on is the Franco-Prussian War. Otto von Bismarck realized that the southern German states distrusted northern Germany. They would not willingly join them in a German state. He believes the only way they will do that is if they feel threatened. Accordingly, in 1870, Bismarck engineers a war with France. He does this by leaking to the press that King Wilhelm had insulted the French ambassador. This was a purely made-up story, but it worked. As a result, the French declared war on Germany, and the southern German states united with northern Germany in the face of this threat. The war only lasted a few short months, and in this map you can see the territory that Germany held at the end of the war. In summary, the wars of unification resulted in the German-speaking principalities uniting as Germany under King Wilhelm I. One thing we remember Otto von Bismarck for is his belief in realpolitik, essentially that morals should not restrain you from doing what you had to do for your country. If you needed that piece of territory, it might be wrong, but you needed to do it for your country, so you did it anyway. Here we see one of his better-known quotes, that the great questions of the day won't be decided by speeches, but rather by blood and iron, or in other words, warfare. Thank you for joining us as we reviewed Nationalism.